Hello again. Welcome to First Christian Church, Adult Fellowship Bible Study. We continue in our study of First Maccabees, a book out of the Apocrypha of the Old Testament. Today's class will focus on the material in chapters 8 and 9, and this is our ninth lesson in the series on the First Maccabees. The battle-to-battle narrative, which is essentially the way this book is written, or at least up to this point, is broken at the beginning of chapter 8 with an insert, so to speak. And clearly, when you start reading chapter 9, you can see chapter 8 is kind of an inserted idea. Instead, it opens with Judas Maccabees, the current leader of the Maccabee clan, is sending ambassadors to Rome to request an alliance with Rome, between Judea and Rome. Quoting, "We have heard of your fame, that you are strong and amiable to all who make alliances with Rome as friends," end quote. We are here to do business on behalf of the Judeans, and specifically the Maccabee Hasmonean, those allegiance to it. It's sort of the understood idea from that. Rome has been undermining the Seleucid regime for quite some time. In 168 BC, shortly before this, and this is approximately somewhere between 166 and 160. I wasn't able to determine exactly when, but in 168 BC, during the reign of Antiochus IV, the Romans forced him to leave Egypt, which he complied with. They helped set up the current king, Demetrius I, and placed him in power, helped place him in power, trained him, and also are helping to keep him weak. In the opening verses of chapter 8, the author describes many victories and strengths of the Roman Empire. Some of those are historical and some are not quite fitting with history. A couple other things for clarity: the Gauls they refer to there are not who we normally think of Gauls, that is the French, but instead this is a group of people that lived in, I believe it was northern Italy, or what would be northern Italy today, and the Romans pushed them westward towards France. Also, the material that's mentioned there of Rome conquering Spain, at this time they had not conquered Spain. Instead, the only thing they have is a small area around these gold and silver mines. That's really all they were interested in, was the minerals, that were the mineral wealth that was there at the time. As mentioned in earlier classes, Rome defeated the Seleucids in 188 in a major battle, much on more or less their northwestern flank of the Seleucid Empire. And there in that defeat, the Seleucids lost territory. In addition to that, they had to pay tribute for a number of decades. And also, and probably worst of all, they had to send 20 young people from the royal family and leading families to Rome on a regular basis to be schooled and trained. And it is actually some of those people that were trained from that first group who are now ruling the army in the Seleucid territory and also ruling legally, that is the royal line. So Rome is already in charge, more or less, in this case. So they're clearly having major impact. But clearly the writer wants his Jewish reader to think of Rome in the most favorable light. And for us New Testament people, that's kind of hard for us to think of, because 150 years later now, the idea that Rome is a friend to a Jew is not a concept that will exist 150 years later. Moreover, it is also clear here that the Maccabee Hasmonean clan, if you will, are after a lot more than religious freedom, which is sort of what they claim in this book that they're fighting for. They're trying to forge a political alliance and to help them achieve and sustain a level of political independence from the Seleucids in particular. This clearly was a strong diplomatic move on behalf of the Maccabees to be able to negotiate something in this area, to be able to put some leverage against the Seleucids with someone of the capacity of Rome. And the Jews come out of this, the Maccabees come out of this with their diplomats return with a bronze letter that confirms the alliance existing now of peace between Rome and the Judeans. Scholars indicate all of this actually happens before Demetrius first really was installed. So the dating that's even here that the Maccabees writer is using is not accurate according to historians. In other words, it's kind of all messed up. The important thing is to keep in mind that the Maccabees want people to understand that they have made this big deal and that this is part of their propaganda. And they've chosen to use it at this place in the text. I'm not sure exactly why. Moving on to chapter 9, it opens with back to the war-to-war narrative with the second expedition of General Bacchides with the Seleucid army. Remember, he was there once before, and then he had to go off and help fight in a major civil war going on in the Seleucid Empire, in which many of the satraps did not, which are the governors of the various provinces, did not go along with this idea of Demetrius being king, and therefore they rebelled, and he had to go help put that rebellion down, and it's now under control. But he's now free to come back and address the situation that he was originally charged with, that is, resolve the Jewish situation. At this time, Judas and his clan are in control of Judea and Jerusalem, except for the citadel, which the Seleucids and renegade Jews, renegades, remember, it's a term for those that are not allied, Jews that are not allied with the Maccabees. The main Seleucid army has been off fighting in that civil war that we mentioned, and now they're back to do the job that they were originally assigned to do: settle the Jewish issue. Josephus' history tells us a lot more about what happens here, and I'll fill in with some of that. This was a big army that's moving in now, much bigger than what had been down there before. And not only that, this army now moves across land and comes down from the north through Galilee into the Judean hills region. And that is very significant strategically, militarily speaking, because what they have now done with this big army is denied the Maccabees their normal hill country that they run into if they get into any trouble. And so for a guerrilla army like the Maccabees have, the Seleucids now have stepped in with a very important strategic maneuver by taking away this area that they normally would hide in. So there's not going to be an easy route of escape. Even if you can run in another direction, you're not running into territory that you can hide in as a guerrilla very well. The Seleucids have blocked them from this natural defense, which is what they've used to win all their other battles. Seleucid history records that this campaign occurs in the spring of 160 BC. When the Maccabees see this large army and realize what is happening, that they have been outflanked and they've lost this strategic land for themselves, many desert Judas. So he is left with a very small number and an obvious forecast for doom. Judas actually gets caught, according to Josephus' account, on a hillside somewhere or another in a classic pincer movement in which two flanks of a major army are moving after him. and they pin him against the hill with no place for him to go. And he's defeated there. They never in the Maccabees use that word though. And he's killed. And so the story that appears in the Maccabees is not a defeat; it's that he dies in this heroic way for his people. But clearly, this was a major military defeat. No mention is made of how the Maccabees recovered Judas's body. And that's interesting because recall the end of our last week's class, he had taken the cantor who led the previous army, beheaded him, and so forth. And so it's very surprising. So there's something missing in the story, probably either that or it would be interesting because the only thing that's mentioned here is that he then is buried at Modin in the family plot. So Judas Maccabees rules from 166 to 160 BC, but just a short period of time. All that time basically fighting wars. His brother Jonathan succeeds him as the new leader of the Maccabees Hasmonean rebels. Jonathan was elected. Obviously recall that Simon, another older brother, and Judas led two different sides of the Maccabees, one more the political and the other one more of the fighting. And for some reason, Simon is not picked by the guerrillas as the new leader, or maybe he elected not to. We don't know. The point is, Jonathan is now elected to be the new leader, and he's going to rule from 160 to 143 BC, a 17-year period, and very successful in many different areas. However, at the start of his reign, Jonathan has only a very small guerrilla force to help protect him. They're scattered in hiding and not in good hiding areas, at least not defensive-wise. He's not in the hills. Instead, he's had to move into the wilderness, closer to the Dead Sea area, using the marshes, some historians claim, as his primary hiding areas. Yet he needs to avenge Judas's death, standard for the manhood, so to speak, in that period of time. And so he's going to look for an opportunity to do battle with Maccabees. He sends his brother John, another one of the Maccabees, with his baggage train. And let's talk just a minute about a baggage train. When that term is used militarily for that period of time, that not only includes excess so-called baggage, in this case tents, etc., but it also included the men that were not able to fight, elderly men, women and children, animals. So that baggage, he sends John to try to hide it in a caravan. One of these caravans that are traveling through the area. Supposedly, some say by the Nabateans, others not sure. Excuse me, but the problem of it is they do not want, with that big army in the area, they don't want that caravan, that baggage hid in that caravan. And so consequently, they kill John and capture these people. Probably going to sell a lot of the women and children into slavery and so forth. To avenge this death of his brother John, Jonathan attacks a wedding caravan, and it's not quite sure whether it's the same caravan or just another caravan in the area, and the scholars argue over this. And he's on the east side of the Jordan. He's not in Judea, so he's over on the other side of the Jordan. Whether, as I say, whether it's the same caravan that did the damage or another one, we're not sure. Maccabees' army during all this time moves in and entraps the Maccabees on the Sabbath, and a battle then is fought for survival on the Sabbath. Jonathan little band is backed up against the Jordan River and against the salt marshes of the Dead Sea. This is no place to be facing a major army. They have nowhere to turn, but they do escape, and they escape by the men at least jumping into the river and swimming across, and then scatter and regroup at some other time. The enemy then decides to return all the way to Jerusalem and take charge there, sets up shop for a while. Meanwhile, they reinforce a number of garrisons in Samaria and the Galilee area and the Judean hills. In other words, these very areas that the Maccabees have been running into, they have taken that away from them with some very strong reinforced garrisons. Plus, they take hostages of the sons of leading men in the communities. So, which would have been a very strong weapon. Essentially, anybody who's independent, you basically got their loyalty very quickly with such a hostage, and even a lot of those who may have been supporting him, they're going to be very reluctant to do anything overtly with their leading son captured. During this time, things are somewhat peaceful with this big army in town. The high priest Alcimus attempts to remodel the temple during this time, but suddenly dies just as the work gets started, and so the work stops. Meanwhile, Bacchides pulls his army out of Jerusalem, out of Judea, and according to Josephus, no high priest is named during this time. In fact, from 159 to 152, there's no high priest, according to Josephus' writings. There is now a period of relative quiet and peace, which Jonathan uses to regroup his unit, mainly in the south, moving south and so forth. And there's a plot set up several times to try to capture Jonathan by Bacchides, but he's able to avoid it. And not only that, he and his brother Simon mount a number of tactical guerrilla battles against the Seleucid army that is remaining, and defeats them to piecemeal. Finally, Jonathan is able to actually negotiate peace agreement of some sort between the Bacchides and the Seleucids. They leave Judea completely, leaving Jonathan in control and to rule. From a town, though not of Jerusalem, but of Mishmash, old King Saul's headquarters, about 7-8 miles north of Jerusalem. It appears that the citadel, though, is still in the hands of the Seleucids and the so-called renegade Jews. Clearly, though, there's no high priest, and exactly how Judaism functioned for that 7-year period without a high priest is interesting. Maybe we'll learn more about it as we continue to read. But this would have had to have significantly altered their form of worship, especially on the high holy days. So next week we'll take up more of the Maccabees, and you can continue to read in chapter 10 and further if you want to stay a little ahead of us. Have a good week.